approach to Har Sinai. What's the connection between the sabbatical year and Har Sinai? So the Chasam Sofer says that Shemitah demonstrates a clear proof that the Torah was given by heaven and not that Moshe Rabbeinu, God forbid, created it in his own heart. Because what person would ever make such a promise that I will command my blessing and you will make these crops for 3 years? Who that the Shemitah year promises that we're going to give you crops. The Torah promises that your crops will be blessed in the 6th year for 3 years, 6, 7, and 8. Obviously, no human being could do that because it's so obviously it's going to demonstrate that it's false if it doesn't happen. Only Hashem can promise that. So therefore, the Shemitah is a proof that Hashem gave the Torah on Har Sinai. That's why it says that Hashem said this Behar Sinai, because Shemitah is the proof that God gave the Torah on Sinai. That's what the Chasam Sofer argues. Excuse me. But I want to now share what Rav Moshe Feinstein says about the connection between Shemitah and Mount Sinai. Rav Moshe Feinstein, of course, the great posek of America. This is what he argues. A beautiful little page that he has on it. It says as follows. This is in Darash Moshe. Darash Moshe, that Moshe expounded on the Torah. So Rav Moshe gives another explanation. We must remember that all the laws of the Torah and the mitzvos have to be studied. This is what Rav Moshe is arguing, because they were commanded at Har Sinai, and not for other reasons. Let me just give you an example before we read from him. You might think, oh, okay, of course we should not work the land every 7th year then it's beneficial for the land to not work it, to let the land lie fallow. But then if you say that that's the reason, and the reason is not from Hashem, then what's going to happen is, today, technologically, you don't need to let the land lie fallow, because you can put in more nutrients every year when you take out the crops, and it's just a waste to let it go fallow. In the time of the Torah, maybe it made sense to let it lie fallow. So if you say the whole reason is just to let the land lie fallow, you say, well, it's not applicable anymore. So it can't be that the reason to not work the land, is because it's beneficial to the land. So the only reason to not work the land is because it was taught to Moses at Mount Sinai. Like what the Chasam Sofer said, that it's a proof that the Torah was given at Har Sinai, and Rav Moshe Feinstein takes it another direction. The whole point is that the Torah, the only reason to keep the sabbatical year is because it was given at Har Sinai. So, and that's where Moshe Feinstein writes, we too have received the mitzvos there, passed down to us from teacher to student back to Moshe. We don't perform them because of reasons and logic we arrived at ourselves. Even if a person imagines a rational basis, a pleasing rational basis for the mitzvos, he can influence others to appreciate and heed the Torah. If a person can say, okay, well, if I give a rational explanation, then maybe people are more likely to keep the sabbatical year. If I say it's actually good for your land. No, you shouldn't do that. You should say that the reason to keep it is only because it was given at Sinai. For example, he says, some people argued that since the law of Shemitah states that during the sabbatical year, the owner and any stranger have equal rights, this shows that nobody really owns the crops. And so therefore, theft cannot be a bad thing because nobody owns them. And also, similarly, the Jubilee year has been misconstrued to mean that the ownership of the land is of little significance. So people can easily misinterpret and misapply these principles. And Shemitah has been used as a source for the belief in communism, for example. So the true reason for these mitzvos, as stated in the Torah, is to teach that the land is Hashem's, and it's only ours to the degree that Hashem allows. He says, another claim has been that the mitzvah Shemitah was meant to approve the land. All these theories are just fabrications and lies. That's the point. We must always remember that we fulfill the mitzvos as they were and because they were commanded at Har Sinai. So why does it say that Shemitah was commanded at Har Sinai? Because it's especially possible to misinterpret and misapply why the mitzvah of Shemitah exists. Mitzvah of Shemitah is only because Hashem told us to do it. And we shouldn't try to apply our own reasons. So therefore, it's taught at Mount Sinai to say it's beyond explanation. Okay, let me just see. Anybody have any questions? All right, we go on. So, I want to share now what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says. Another explanation of why was Shemitah taught at Har Sinai. Hold on. The Rebbe, in his introduction to the parsha, the Rebbe has introductions to all of the parshios. So in his introduction to Parshas Behar, he raises this point. He said, when you think of Har Sinai, you think of the most exalted moment in Jewish history and human history. We're standing at Mount Sinai in this exalted state. God spoke to everyone. God spoke to everybody at Mount Sinai. And then are we not cheapening it by comparing it to the agricultural laws? Aren't we taking, it's like you open up a civil code, what land you can work, what you can't. This is what the Rebbe's referring to. At first glance, the opening context of the parasha seems almost antithetical to the people's exalted spiritual state at Sinai. Let's recall that Mount Sinai was the scene of what was the most intense divine revelation ever experienced in history, where the Torah was given. Here as well, the bulk of the Torah's laws were explained in detail, as God communicated with Moses over a period of almost a full year. At the foot of the mountain, the Mishkan was first set up, in which Hashem revealed his presence to his people in the heavenly fire that consumed the daily sacrifices. It was at this exalted mountain. By the way, there was an area to set up the tabernacle. But it was at this exalted mountain which our people attained the most sublime spiritual heights, being free from the confines of mundane existence. And yet, when we start Parshas Behar, it's called the mountain. The commandments and human concerns that open Parshas Behar are almost mundane. You can't work the land. What are we going to eat? The Torah says if you're going to ask, what are we going to eat? From there it gets further. We're told we can't work the land, and if we work the land in the seventh year, we'll be forced to sell our assets, our inheritance, our home, borrow on interest, and ultimately we'll have to sell ourselves as a slave. So basically, the depths to which a human being can sink in defiance of God's law stands in sharp contrast to the sublime images evoked by Mount Sinai. So on the one hand, we have the highest spiritual heights of Mount Sinai. On the other hand, excuse me. On the other hand, we have the lowest levels. The person is being sold into slavery. So why is this being taught at Mount Sinai? So says the Rebbe, the answer to this is, of course, that this contrast is intentional. The striking reference to Har Sinai that constitutes the beginning and the name of this parsha is meant to inspire us how to overcome the darkness of a world that promotes the skeptical notions and degenerate materialism detailed in the rest of the parsha. So we want to know how to elevate ourselves, how to go beyond this level of somebody who's unable to follow the laws of the Torah. On our own, we can't do it, says the Rebbe. We're stuck. What we need is Sinai. If we want to know how to navigate the laws of the Shemitah, of the agriculture, of not falling into sin, the only way to do that is through the Torah. This is what the Rebbe says. Parashas Behar opens with an allusion to the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai in order to remind us that's from the Torah and only from the Torah that we possess the power to elevate even the most mundane aspects of life into the spiritual realm. And that's why the laws of Shemitah year are specified for being taught at Har Sinai. Let me just pause in case anybody has any questions. Hold on one second.